Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 5:06 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The aftermath of Hurricane Helene is chaotic, to say the least. Over 200 Americans are dead. Hundreds remain missing. Search and rescue operations continue. But the reports coming from especially Western North Carolina right now are that the federal government is meaningfully impeding the efforts by especially civilians to try and rescue their fellow citizen. Here's one Tennessee pilot speaking to the Blaze's Julio Rosas this week, talking about the federal response or a lack thereof.
There is a complete and utter lack of federal government response. We think whoever's in charge right now flew by yesterday through the TFR. I've seen nobody on the ground. Ivanka Trump came yesterday, talked to us. Elon Musk guy's been here talking to us. Glenn Beck is here now talking to us. I've seen no one from the federal government to help out at all. Nobody.
What do you think about that?
To be honest, it just pisses me off. This is our country. We should be being taken care of.
This is our country. You should be here taking care of us. For more on what he's seeing on the ground, what he has been seeing on the ground, Julio Rosas joins us now, national correspondent for The Blaze, the author of Fiery but Mostly Peaceful. Julio, good to have you back with us, sir. Thank you.
Oh, it's all crazy, Vince.
It's always crazy. So with you, at least. Julio, tell me about this last week. What have you been up to? What have you seen?
So I was with Congressman Cory Mills and Mercury One, and we were just flying from Florida. We were flying supplies from Florida into Greenville, South Carolina. We would then load those supplies onto helicopters, and from Greenville, it's 15, 20, 25 minutes to any of the particularly hard-hit areas in the mountain regions of North Carolina. And so, I mean, it's you know, you see the videos online, but it's crazy to see it in person where it's not bits and pieces of the road that are damaged. It is entire sections and entire lengths of roadway are gone. And there are places where you think that the river was originally at, but it shifted so much from all the debris and the mud that there's like new confluences and there's new streams where there were buildings and roads that used to be there. And so it's just crazy to think about how slow the federal response has been and how critical the civilian-run operations have been to the survival of the communities that have been cut off. And you really kind of shudder thinking about that if it wasn't for these veterans, these locals, and volunteers from out of state, you know, banding together and carrying out these missions, you start to wonder just how much higher the confirmed death toll would be. And obviously it's already too high, but these civilian-run operations have quite literally saved lives, and they're continuing to save lives.
We've seen hurricane damage in low-lying coastal areas, of course, which is where it often happens. But this is unusual given that you're talking about mountainous region where all this flooding occurred, having been hit by a hurricane. How does the terrain change the search and rescue operations from what we normally see?
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, you have one side of the mountains that are completely fine, and then the other side of the mountains, everything's just been washed away. All the trees are down. And so, obviously, down trees, down power lines, poles, that makes things difficult because most of these communities that are only accessible by air, sometimes it's even hard to do that with helicopters because there's no good place to land in the valleys. And so that's something that we kind of ran into a few times when we were up on the helicopters. And so that's not to say that it's not impossible to get to every single place, but it can take a while, especially if you're going by foot or you're using pack animals, kind of like what we've been seeing.
Yeah.
But right now, the kind of good news is a lot of the communities have been pretty good on getting food and water and kind of the clothing. the thing that they're asking for now is they're trying to get ahead of the fall and winter because they're still without power. They're going to be without power for a while. They're asking for generators. They're asking for chainsaws. They're asking for parts for the chainsaws because they're going to be using those a lot.
Yes.
And fuel and portable stoves because, this is their home. This area is their home. They don't want to leave if they don't have to. But so that means they're going to need a lot more support beyond just food and water.
So that I played that audio that you gathered of that Tennessee pilot telling you that the only really response that he's seen, at least the area that he was operating in, was from civilians, from people like Elon Musk. They have their groups out there trying to get people connected and supplies to them, and people like yourself out there. But he said he hasn't really seen anything from the federal government. What, in your assessment, having been there, what kind of federal response are you seeing, and how does that compare to the civilian response?
So, yes, FEMA's out there, federal assets are out there. The problem is it took them a long time to really get going. I mean, they only really started to show up in force until like yesterday, right? And this storm hit pretty hard Friday and Saturday.
Yes.
And so that's what I was saying at the beginning, where the civilian-run operations have been the ones that have been coordinating everything right after the storm came and went. And so that's why there's a lot of frustration because people are asking feds, what took you so long to get here? And now they're asking, well, now why are you mucking things up of things that have been running pretty smoothly, all things considered?
What does that mean, mucking things up? What are they doing that's obstructing the operation?
I mean, even with the supply runs and getting teams through to kind of clear roadway, I overheard at this outpost in Swananoa where they went to the local sheriff's department and fire department, and they said, well, you have to go to FEMA. And they go to the FEMA trailer, and there's no one there. And so there's just like, what's going on? Why do we have to go through FEMA? Like, we're ready to go. We're ready to go through to kind of reconnect these towns.
Yeah.
And the local authorities are now starting to say, well, now you got to go through FEMA. So now there's just this bureaucracy and red tape, which is kind of what any disaster area needs. And so when just taking their time and just kind of nonchalantly with some of the things that they've been doing, that's why there's a lot of resentment being built up right now with how the federal government is handling this because because the civilians have been doing it on their own for the first 4 or 5 days.
So I know, Julio, in addition to being an excellent reporter, you're also a Marine. And I wonder from your perspective if it would have been useful to have active duty military involved in some of these search, rescue, and recovery efforts throughout this week. We just got the President of the United States to say, I think 2 days ago now, that finally they were beginning to mobilize 1,000 soldiers from Fort Bragg, now known as Fort Liberty. But beyond that, nothing. That's a state, North Carolina specifically, that's very dense with military bases. Could military members have played a role here?
Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, the reason why, that's why it's kind of cynical now because there was a CNN aviation reporter that it was like, oh, scoop, we've had, the airspace is so cluttered with civilian aircraft that, we're having these like near collision in the air. And it's like, okay, well, first of all, the reason why there's so many civilian assets in the air is because there was no government assets. There was no government aviation initially, and they've been slow to kind of get in. So if people were there at the beginning, if more resources were staged early on, yeah, I mean, anything could have been useful, in the beginning parts of it. And so now that's why it's just very, what the heck? You're gonna leak this to CNN to kind of make it seem like the people that are putting in their own time, their own resources, their own lives, essentially, and you're going to try to frame it as like, well, they're getting in the way now.
Yeah. I can't imagine the operating cost for a helicopter is especially cheap each hour. It seems like these guys are putting out a lot of money on their own to try and rescue their countrymen.
Yeah, I mean, because this is their town. These are their neighbors. This is their region, right? They feel compelled. they have the assets to help out people. So it's like, why wouldn't I? I mean,
Yes.
that's basically their mindset, and that's why it's great. But it's just shameful that it's had to fallen largely on them and not the people that we pay taxes to.
Julio, I wonder if you can give us a sense. I don't know if it's even possible to estimate something like this, but we watch with each passing day as the known death toll is rising as a result of the storm. It's the second deadliest storm this century since Hurricane Katrina in the United States, and the number is well over 200 deaths now. The numbers that we hear on missing is hundreds. What is your sense of this? What are these first responders, whether they be civilian or otherwise, thinking as they travel around looking for survivors?
So that's kind of the biggest thing, right? Is okay, we have missing, but is that just because they're in an area where they can't communicate, or is it because they truly are, unfortunately, the worst case scenario? And so that's why it's been critical to get these Starlinks up and running, because through that we have been able to, or they've been able to confirm, okay, they're no longer missing, they're in place, they're good, because we've been able to communicate with them. But the issue is that we're well outside the 96-hour window of this crisis, and unfortunately, once you're outside that window, people that they couldn't get to in time, that leads to deaths, right? And that's why those first few days were so important for there to be a good response, because people at the beginning might have been good, they might have weathered the storm good, but then they run out of supplies, and then they can't reach anybody to tell them there. The last supply run that I was at in the helicopters, we weren't dropping off, like I said, we weren't dropping off food. We're dropping off the chainsaws, we're dropping off tools, we're dropping off oxygen tanks, medicine, kind of the more higher end stuff, because that's starting to run out now, because there hasn't been regular shipments because the roads are out. So the longer that this goes on, and the longer that these roads are not traversable, unfortunately, people that might have survived at the beginning of this, they might succumb to other things because they can't be reached in time.
Julio Rosas, finally, as you talk to people on the ground who are being subjected to all of this, what do they think of the idea that the federal government has spent untold sums of money on foreign nationals? And FEMA in particular has been responsible for giving lots of money to aiding illegal foreign nationals into our country. Meanwhile, Secretary Mayorkas this week is saying we don't have enough money to take care of Americans afflicted by hurricanes this year. What's the response to that, if any?
I mean, it's a punchline after every other sentence, because they just think, oh, well, we could have used it for this, or we could have put it towards more of what we need at the current moment, right? There's a lot, like I said, there's just a lot of frustration and a lot of resentment that they're kind of in this position now. Obviously, they're more than happy to help out. They're more than happy to put in the time. But then, of course, the question is, well, then why am I paying taxes? Why? Yeah. Why is it having to fall on us when, one of the few original functions of the government that the United States was set up for, to take, actually step in these types of situations. Yeah. Why is it being so hindering to us, right? And so once the news cycle kind of goes away, this is going to be months. There's a town called Pensacola, North Carolina, and the chief medical officer there was saying, like, yeah, we're going to be dealing with this well into next year, and we're going to be still finding things that we may not want to find well into next year, just because that's how deadly and that's how destructive the storm was.
Well, Julio Rosas, as always, whenever there's chaos anywhere in the country, I know you can be counted on to cover it and bring us the truth about what's happening there. Julio, good to talk to you from the Blaze today. Always appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks.
The people who will be present for that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania tomorrow is Elon Musk, who has been battling it out today with Trans Secretary Pete Buttigieg because He posted that he's having all sorts of trouble having his guys help as part of the recovery efforts, the rescue efforts, the communications efforts in the hurricane-affected zone. And Pete Buttigieg responded on Twitter, "No one is shutting down the airspace, and FAA doesn't block legitimate rescue and recovery flights. If you're encountering a problem, give me a call." So Elon Musk said, okay, I'll follow you. Please DM me the number to call. He said there are hundreds of reports of FEMA and FAA blocking flights. This literally just happened. And then Elon tweeted again, "Still waiting. The helicopter is trying to land to deliver critical supplies. What's the number to call?" He's demanding. And I guess the Trans Secretary finally rushed back a phone call to Elon Musk because they got on the phone together, and Elon just posted about an hour ago, "Thanks for the call. Hopefully we can resolve this soon." I love this. So President Trump has decided that Elon Musk needs to head up an office called the Department of Government Efficiency, which the acronym for that is DOGE, for those of you playing along at home. The Department of Government Efficiency. And he's not even in office yet. Elon getting the transportation secretary to actually do things. Meanwhile, if you were to shake Joe Biden awake right now and say, "Quick, who's the trans secretary?" What would he say? Rachel Levine? Stay with us. I've got Joe Biden stepping up to the microphone for the first time in his entire presidency in that press briefing room today. It was a disaster. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:35 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Coming up, Joe Biden, he's in hiding. The White House has taken Sleepy Joe and tried to tuck him in. You can sleep the rest of the presidency out. And it's coming out in the media today. They're writing articles about it. Wait a second, what happened to Joe Biden? Remember when he was president? So they pushed him in front of a microphone today, and they're like, okay, try and stop these stories, would you, Joe? It was a disaster. I've got some clips from that coming up. But before I get there, I've got a call coming in from Mary in Loudoun County. Excellent, Loudoun County, line 6. Hello, Mary, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
You.
Hey there.
Hey, Vince. Hey, I just wanted to call in from what you all were talking about in the last hour about the transgender volleyball player. My son happened to go to high school with this player, and they did a two-page spread in the yearbook about how brave it was of this boy to become a girl and how proud they were of her. And yeah, so it's something that we get to live with in my son's yearbook every time we go back and look at it.
All right, so this is, amazing. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think I'm right about this because I was quoting, it's John Champ High School, right?
Yep, John Champ High School, yep.
And this guy was playing on the volleyball team with the girls a couple years ago.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And is now playing at the collegiate level and causing all sorts of drama because all of the other college female volleyball teams, a lot of them are boycotting playing against this guy and have decided to just forfeit their games instead. And so your son went to school with this boy. Yes.
And has a yearbook to commemorate it, yes.
And so what did his classmates think of all of this? Did everyone just sort of go with it? Or was it just like, oh, well, whatever?
So my son graduated in 21, and she was graduated right before. And it wasn't as what I thought was celebrated back then as it is now. And I was quite honestly shocked to see this two-page spread in the yearbook. Because, now you're elevated to sainthood when you do something like this within our school system. I was actually just telling your call screener that I don't know if you're aware of this, but Loudoun County Public Schools just signed a proclamation that October is now LGBTQ plus History Month in Loudoun County Public Schools. So not only do we get to celebrate this nonsense in June, but now we get it in October as well.
Yeah, well, we need an entire month to abuse our children. Child Abuse Month is now every October. Yeah. Man.
And then something else I wanted to tell you about, that another nutty thing that's going on in Loudoun County Public Schools that I don't know if you and your listeners are aware of, but anytime a racial slur is used in the school system, or at a school, we all get an email home about how this incident occurred and that Loudoun County Public Schools won't tolerate racism in our schools, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, my gosh.
Incidences in our school that I know who said it and to who, and in one incident, it involved parents, all of them African American.
I'm sorry, tell me.
They're calling out race.
Go ahead.
So when the cases occurred, when people used the racial slurs, they were African American kids / parents against other African American kids / parents.
Okay.
But that is not included in the email that goes out.
I mean, first of all, why do you need a community-wide email for a dispute between two students? Why can't it used to be that you could just be like, if you needed to get the parents involved, you did. You said, hey, get control of your kids. They're out of control. Please do this. Why do you need to send out snowflake reports, like full-blown flurry reports to the rest of the school community?
To send this out because they need to continue to fan the flame of racism within our county, but they're leaving out a small detail that actually kind of matters. Who is using the racial slurs? There you go. So again, it's just them continuing to fan the flame of racism in our county and in our schools. In fact, Loudoun Now, the end of last school year, did a whole article about how there were 890-some cases of racial slurs in our county schools. Not one time did it mention who was using those racial slurs.
So, and what is this? Just
so
like,
again,
based on your understanding, Mary, is it just like black kids using the N-word with each other? Is that it?
Yes.
What a completely stupid thing. One of many stupid things
that we're living in. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Can't wait to get out of here. Can't wait. And anybody that has their kids in elementary school or younger, I am begging you, do your kids a service and get the heck out of here, because this is a cesspool that we are living in and putting our kids through.
Man, I know, but so many Loudoun County parents fighting back against it too. And it's amazing because I don't know what it is. If it's maybe it's in the water in Loudoun County, but there are a lot of good parents who keep trying to go and fight back. They go to the school board, and even though they're running uphill, some of the school board members too, for that matter, I think there's 3 of them that are on the side of decency, and they keep trying to fight back.
Yeah.
And actually, it encourages the rest of us all around the country. Loudoun is constantly right at the forefront of a lot of these battles, and then it gets captured on camera, disseminated to the rest of the country, and it gives a lot of other people the spirit to fight. So, for those of you who are fighting in Loudoun, keep up the good work.
As a parent in this county, it's embarrassing, and it all stems from the very top. We have another idiot as superintendent. And it just starts from the top down. And I can remember the years when Hatrick was our superintendent and life was normal. Ever since he left, it's gone downhill rapidly.
What a world. What a world. Thank you, Mary. I appreciate the report.
So, you're welcome. All righty. Bye-bye.
There you go. All right, Mary, with a great phone call on the insanity in our schools, in particular Loudoun. All right, let me go to the insanity in the White House today. Joe Biden has never once done the Brady press briefing room as president of the United States. I didn't look back at his vice presidency because I don't really care, but also because it's irrelevant for this data point. This is the first time he's done this. Usually they just send Corinne out there to give mindless answers, and then she walks away. Now they sent the president of the United States out to give mindless answers. And look, this is the product of some coverage this morning from Axios. They had a report. It's Alex Thompson who covered this. That Joe Biden needs to just disappear. Alex Thompson, who by the way is actually I think a pretty talented reporter at Axios, one of the guys that you should give credit to for his journalism because he does quite a bit of it. The headline: The disappearing Biden's a quiet end to a presidency. And he runs through some of the statistics here. He says Biden hasn't scheduled any public events in 43 of the 75 days since he dropped his reelection bid. So basically he's completely AWOL. He's at the beach all the time. Since dropping out on July 21st, Joe Biden has scheduled just 2 public appearances before 11 o'clock in the morning. None before 10 o'clock in the morning. And 5 of them after 5 p.m. So with one exception, all publicly scheduled calls and meetings with other world leaders have been between 11 o'clock in the morning and 5 p.m. in the evening, a sign of how Biden's staff continues to narrow his work hours as they manage his stamina. Has there ever been a better case for the 25th Amendment than this guy? So Joe Biden can't do work. Forget 3 a.m. Remember the old one? Could you handle the 3 a.m. call? This guy can't handle the 5:30 p.m. call. And so this story was kind of bumping around today in the media sphere, in the legacy media sphere. And as a result, the White House said, well, why don't we shove Joe Biden out in front of the microphone for a few minutes today? And it came as a big surprise. And the press was acting so giddy as Joe Biden walked out. Take a listen.
Hey, folks. My name's Joe Biden.
Welcome, Mr. President.
We've been waiting for you.
Welcome to the swimming pool.
This is great.
Hey, look, folks, good afternoon.
He said, welcome to the swimming pool. A little White House history. The press briefing room is built on top of the old swimming pool at the White House. Joe Biden is old enough to have skinny dipped there, so that's why he's remembering the good old days. He says, welcome to the swimming pool, he announces. He also started the press conference by reading a pre-written statement for him about the longshoremen and that dock strike coming to an end.
Hey, look, folks, good afternoon. The past 2 days we've gotten some very good news about the American economy. Just yesterday, shipping carriers, after some discussion, an International Longshoremen Union came to an agreement to keep ports in the East Coast and the Gulf ports open.
He's bumbling as he's delivering the pre-written statement. Although I will say it's interesting that Ron DeSantis yesterday down in Florida started deploying the National Guard to force the ports back open. He's like, well, I'm just going to send the National Guard and we'll get the ports back open. And you do wonder to what extent that may have been something of a tipping point for these negotiations. Like, oh crap, DeSantis is going to start opening ports. Let's just settle up for now. And the longshoremen, it is true, they went back to work today, but they pushed. Did you see the date that they pushed to? The negotiation, the current contract is only going to run through. It's like a continuing resolution. It's a can kick. It's only going to run until January 15th, which puts it just 5 days ahead of the inauguration. So if you like dock chaos, then perhaps port chaos, perhaps you'll get more of it just before the inauguration.
We averted what could have become a major crisis for the country, and a tentative agreement which includes record wage increases for dock workers and shows the importance of collective bargaining and represents, I think, critical progress toward a strong contract. I especially want to thank the carriers, the port operators, and the Longshoremen's Union for reaching this agreement at a time when the nation has experienced such terrible devastation from Hurricane Helene,
which we are also allowing to fester into a complete disaster. He also then bragged about today's jobs numbers, a positive jobs report coming out today. You shouldn't dig too deeply into the details. You'll be miserable.
Today, we got more incredible news. Although the strength of the American economy it's about the strength of the American economy.
Oh, really?
The new jobs report, as you all know, you've been reporting, created 250,000 jobs in September. The expectation was for 150,000 jobs.
You want the big picture on this? E.J. Antoni, our in-house economist, points out today, in the last year, native-born Americans have lost 823,000 jobs. Foreign-born workers? Well, they picked up 1.2 million. That's the Biden-Harris economy for you. So Joe Biden out trying to brag about these jobs numbers today. Not good news for the American people. We haven't had that in a while. Marco Rubio was pointing out that, hey, these jobs numbers we keep getting, every time we get them, it turns out they're revised downward later. So another fake jobs report, said Marco Rubio today on Twitter. Biden was asked about this.
Thanks again for doing this, Mr. President. 2 questions. The first, Florida Senator Marco Rubio described today's jobs report as having fake numbers. What do you make of that, and how worried are you?
He started cackling like that dog from the Hanna-Barbera cartoons.
The Americans are hearing that the jobs numbers aren't real.
Look, I'm going to be very careful here.
Yeah, you be careful.
If you notice, anything the MAGA Republicans don't like, they call fake. Anything. The job numbers are what the job numbers are.
Yeah, Americans are losing jobs, foreigners are picking them up.
They're real. Mm-hmm. They're sincere. They're what we are. And by the way, just look at how the EU talks about us, how they like to have an economy like ours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sucker economy. Yeah, this is So there's the president of the United States out there. They push him out there to do a briefing today. He was also asked, this is so typical. You know, first of all, almost all of the questions were foreign policy related. Almost none of them had anything to do with us, anything to do with the American people. Which, again, typical. But among the few questions that came up that had something to do with America, Joe Biden was asked, hey, are Republicans going to be violent during the election? Are Republicans going to start rioting? Are they going to cause some trouble? Now, remember, of course, that Joe Biden's political opponent, now Kamala Harris's political opponent, has already been shot in the head this election season. You have a would-be assassin who showed up outside President Trump's golf course in Florida, tried to take a shot at him, and he declared outright that democracy is on the ballot, aping the talking points of the White House that were delivered from the very lectern that Joe Biden is now standing at. And the conversation in the White House briefing room today was, just how dangerous are Republicans? That was the question. Here's how Biden fielded it.
I'd like to know how you're feeling about how this election is going. And then also, do you have confidence that it will be a free and fair election and that it will be peaceful?
Two separate questions.
Very much.
I'm confident it'll be free and fair. I don't know whether it'll be peaceful. The thing
Isn't that great? So immediately he says that it is not worth scrutinizing at all the way elections are conducted. He knows in advance that they will be free and fair. So don't you worry your little head around that subject at all. At all. You know? Okay, good. Get rid of Democrat poll watchers then. If that's your position, then don't have any Democrat poll watchers anywhere in the country, Joe. Get rid of them. It's fine. It's all free and fair. There's no reason to keep an eye on this. Why is the Civil Rights Division engaged in any of this then? Just disband it at the Justice Department. If it's all going to be on the up and up, you don't need any of these organizations or operatives out there keeping an eye on the election. Voter suppression? Remember how often they told us about voter suppression? No such thing, says Joe Biden. It's going to be free and fair. The election's going to be perfect. People being asked to show voter ID being voter suppression, we're not worried about that at all. The election's going to be great, says Joe. This is the same party that was once concern trolling us about the Postal Service, saying that the Postal Service was going to steal the election for Donald Trump. Now it's fine. The Postal Service, it's going to conduct a free and fair election, says Joe. Joe is confident that the election's going to be perfectly run. No reason to scrutinize it. But peaceful? Oh, no. Not with Donald Trump running at the top of the ticket.
Very much.
I'm confident it'll be free and fair. I don't know whether it'll be peaceful. The things that Trump has said and the things that he said last time out when he didn't like the outcome of the election.
That's right. You peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
Were very dangerous. If you notice, I noticed that the vice presidential Republican candidate did not say he'd accept the outcome of the election. They haven't even accepted the outcome of the election.
Because he's not a sucker. The whole idea is like, hey, will you accept the results of an election no matter how it's conducted and no matter how much we cheat? No. It's kind of a situational question, isn't it? I accept the results of an election so long as I believe they accurately reflect the will of the people. That's why you accept it. Ask, what's her face? Hillary Clinton. Does she accept the results of the 2016 election? The answer to that is no, she doesn't.
Last election. So I'm concerned about what they're going to do.
Are you making any preparations, getting security briefings related to domestic security?
I always get those briefings.
Yeah, of course. I always get those briefings. We're constantly arresting Republicans. What are you talking about? Haven't you seen the scoreboard? How many of my political opponents do I have to arrest before you stop asking me that question? Of course. We're arresting people who sing church hymns outside of abortion mills. I mean, we're going deep, baby. We're getting all of them. Don't you worry your little head. We're going after all these people. Women in wheelchairs singing church hymns. President Trump is headed back to Butler, Pennsylvania tomorrow to finish the address that he was trying to give earlier this year. Elon Musk will be in attendance. So many people are going to be in attendance. Here's what President Trump said he's going to say. He told Dave Ramsey this week.
I hear you're going back to Butler and finish the speech.
I am. I'm going to say, as I was saying,
yeah,
right? That was a tough day, and I don't recommend it for anybody. I got very lucky, or maybe more than luck.
Yeah, if you don't turn
There
your
was
head and
somebody
start
up there.
talking about the immigration chart at the precise moment,
If
it's
I
a
don't
problem.
turn my head at the exact 90-degree angle, if I was a little off one way or the other, it's I'm not doing this very nice interview with you. I wouldn't be around to do this interview.
As I was saying, President Trump continues his campaign tomorrow, Butler, Pennsylvania. And I'll continue this show with you Monday right here on WMAL, the great one. Mark Levin up next.